Hello, you're here at the Lily channel, and I'm really excited. We have one of my great friends, Diane Windingland, all the way from Texas, but since she's virtual, it's like she's next door, from the virtual speech coach. Now, we are here to talk about, since it is ADHD Awareness Month, this fine month of October, and we're heading into scary times, Halloween, and then family time in November. Why don't we do something unheard of in ADHD land? Preparing. So Diane is going to help us prepare for those savory, interesting Thanksgiving conversations, or whatever you call it, friend raiser, whatever, when you get together for a meal. It might even be a meeting before Thanksgiving because everyone is stressed out and wondering, oh my gosh, what am I doing? When your thoughts should be at that meeting. Let's say you are that high-powered CEO. While you're watching this channel, you can have a lot of fun. Diane, welcome to my channel, and thank you.
Thank you, Lily. I'm excited to be here.
How about giving us a blurb on what your specialty is?
Sure. I am a communication coach for subject matter experts, typically helping them increase their confidence and their clarity in presentation skills, interviewing, and impromptu speaking.
For all sorts of occasions, whether you are in court, whether you are interviewing. Well, why don't you tell them?
Often they're going to be speaking at work, at meetings, doing a presentation, or responding to questions, speaking at a conference, that type of thing.
Even for competitions. Actually, she's won multiple competitions and has been with Toastmasters forever. Way to go. Now, a little caveat here. I'm the one with the ADHD. Thankfully, she doesn't have it, so she has great perspective on it.
Oh, I have family and friends with ADHD, however.
And you love us.
I love the energy that I find most people with ADD or ADHD have. They usually bring a lot of energy and creativity, and I can sometimes help them execute on some of those exciting ideas that they have.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. Now, say we were at a meeting and there is maybe 10 people sitting there. You give me your high stakes idea, which would move the whole team forward. You're the CEO of the team. So you would think people would pay attention to you, but no. Describe what you're seeing and what should be done, or what that CEO should say.
Well, if you're talking about people being disengaged, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Like maybe they're looking at their phones, they're doing something else, or they're just not paying attention. Is that what you're talking about? Like maybe the CEO is talking to people with ADHD?
Oh, that could even be. That could even be.
So the question is, you've lost an audience. How do you get them back? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of ways. The main thing you have to do is you have to change something, because after a while, it all becomes wah, 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 it just blurs together and people aren't paying attention. So you have to change things up. Depending on the work environment, it could be simply pounding the table just to get their attention. And then you can smile so they know that it's like they've not done anything wrong. And you can make a joke. Well, that's one way to get attention, right? Or my personal favorite is to ask a question. And you can ask questions of specific people, like, Lily, what do you think about blah, 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 blah? And honestly, everyone will pay attention because they're all seeing you as in their place. Ooh, she just got asked a question. You can also ask a question that anyone could answer. You could ask them to do something like, give me a thumbs up if you think this is a good idea, or by a show of hands. Or you could start telling a story where you might even have a question like, have you ever had to blah, 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 blah? Well, that's how I felt when, or let me tell you about one of my favorite clients and what happened to him. Or, a story will often engage people, especially if there's something intriguing, like there is a problem or an obstacle to a goal that will get people's attention. So those are just a few ideas.
I like it. I really like it. Wow. Now, let's say you're heading over to the family. Oh, one thing you had, I think we had discussed right before the interview was emotions and family related chats. The fact that you're actually preparing for something.
Yes. If you just walk into a gathering, whether it be a work meeting or a family get together, you are setting yourself up perhaps for not being your best self or having the best response to what happens. So I suggest that you think about what you're going into, who's going to be there, why are they there, why do they care, what do they want to accomplish by being there. So actually think about that, and then think about if you've been with some of these people in the past, what have maybe been some challenges or bumpy conversations, and think about your own emotional triggers. Have there been things that were said or done that caused an emotional flare up for you? And some of those things, the people may not even realize that they're doing it. Maybe someone, wags their finger at you, and that brings back an emotional trigger of when the mean teacher at school would wag their finger, and
Mhm.
you just get upset and you blurt out, or maybe you don't say anything, you just simmer underneath. So to actually think about why people are there, who's going to be there, what's happened in the past, your own emotional triggers. And then I would say, think about how you would typically handle maybe a conflict, either that you expect because it happens every year or every meeting, or that you don't expect. Like, what is your typical response to conflict? And so you've probably heard, and I'm going to ask you to answer this, Lily, in just a moment. There's fight, flight, freeze, and face. And if I could describe them briefly, fight is when it's like, well, I'm okay, but you're not okay. And you just kind of like butt heads. Flight is when I'm not okay, you're not okay, and you just avoid or deny. Freeze is sort of like, I'm not okay, but you're okay. And I'm just gonna like give in and accommodate. And then face could be either compromise, where we're both sort of okay, or it's a win-win where I'm okay and you're okay. Now,
Mhm.
fight, flight, freeze, or face, all of those responses to conflict are appropriate at certain times. Not typically in business meetings, not typically in family gatherings, but what would you say your typical approach to conflict is, Lily?
I face it. I actually, scary enough, I welcome it. I'm one of the few. It's really weird. I don't like stuffing things, and I surprise people when I say, no, really, I'd love to hear your opinion. And then actually, in some cases, it scares them because their opinion is based on what everyone else has been saying versus their actual own opinion. But and then I have to back down.
I think all of us would like to think that we are usually face it type of conflict people. And I would say, in general, that would probably be me too. I used to be more of a fight where, like, I
Mhm.
mean, I would get in your face and you will not push me around. However, that doesn't always work.
Yeah.
But sometimes, under certain emotional triggers, we all behave a little differently. And I don't know if you can, I'll give you an example of a family gathering with my mother-in-law and father-in-law years ago. Well, first, let me explain. My mother-in-law grew up in Korea. So she has like a different cultural background, which
Mhm.
can make an interesting family gathering. And my father-in-law and I were talking politics. And I thought we did not agree, but I thought we were having a very interesting conversation. And then my mother-in-law later took me aside and said, I don't like it when you argue with my husband. So please don't argue with him. And I'm thinking, what? And you know, I didn't say that because that would have not accomplished anything. And but I did say, you know, we were just having a discussion. And she said, well, that sounded like an argument to me. I'm like, oh, okay. So I
Wow.
just decided, you know what? From her cultural perspective,
Oh,
it
yeah.
was almost like I was disrespecting her husband, who was older and a male, by disagreeing with
Oh,
him.
interesting.
And so I thought, you know what? This is a battle I don't have to fight.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
so I basically accommodated and like, okay, I don't have to, we don't have to talk politics. That totally works. Um,
Oh.
but I do remember feeling really annoyed that that was her perspective. We cannot always change other people's perspective because, well, it's theirs and how they feel is how they feel, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's wild. It the whole thing reminds me about my interpreting class like decades ago because the whole thing was about anticipating what's going to happen, the vocabulary used, the emotions faced. I thought this is like one big interpreting class. You're thinking of what the situation is going to be, what will be talked about, what words to use, and what emotions you need to interpret. Because if you're taken aback, granted, it wasn't simultaneous interpretation, but wow, it is a lot, isn't it? And even
Right.
I think in some cases you can use items that are around you, not to throw them, but just to look at them and break your own thought pattern and go, okay, just look at the item on the table and just have a space and then maybe answer. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I would say I've never done it where I've looked at an item, but the idea of having a break or a pause before you respond, you know, gather your emotions for a moment, take a breath. It's amazing what just one deep breath can do to get you out of feeling flustered or anxious. Just, you know, and maybe you'll even have something you tell yourself like, this isn't going to matter in 5 years, or it's going to be okay. You know, just like an internal dialogue that helps calm yourself.
And I think even in some cases, I would say that if something is really embarrassing you about maybe something you have done to just address the elephant and to be vulnerable because
Can you
people,
give me an example?
oh, you really want me to? Well, for example,
And then I will share an example too, so you don't feel like you're being too vulnerable
oh no,
alone.
this is funny. Well, I was literally looking at my face in this lovely Zoom and I thought, wow, after I put the lotion on my face, I look like I'm jaundiced because I put powder on my face to look more awake. Now I have an orange face. Great. So you can always tell people, hey, I'm on camera and I just realized, or whatever your situation is, like, wow, I'm underdressed for the occasion, or oh, this was a dressy, or I don't know, wow, I
Well,
undersold
you're just
it.
like, you know, this is what it is.
Yeah,
I'm okay with it. And there are things you can't change.
yeah,
So it's like, just have to deal with it, right?
yeah. And then you get a good laugh out of it because they're like, oh, that's why you look jaundiced. No. But
Well,
you
if you can have a little bit of self-deprecating humor, I mean,
know,
without putting yourself down too much, because that
yeah,
can get old if someone keeps putting
yeah,
themselves down. But now and then, you know, if you have something that, let's just say, is not a huge part of your identity that you can make fun of. Let's say I was late for a gathering and I was late because I got lost.
mm,
Well, I use my GPS to go everywhere. And if somehow I put like, and I've done this where I put in the wrong address and I didn't even notice I was going the wrong way. And so I'm like, you know me, directionally disabled Diane.
Same here.
And yeah.
Oh, oh, and you also had this cool visual leap.
Yeah, so if you want to have I won't call it foolproof, but a framework for having conflict conversations, or you might even call it resolving conflict. And this works both personally and also in business. I use this as one of my impromptu speaking lessons with some of my clients. There's an acronym, LEAP, and this was not developed by me. It was something I read years ago in a book. I think the clinical psychologist Javier Amador, I believe, is the person who came up with this acronym. And he was dealing with people with mental illness. I was dealing with teenagers, so not a big difference. But
Yeah.
anyway, it stands for listen reflectively, where you might ask questions, clarify, rephrase what they're saying. So it sounds like you're upset about, and then, just like without a judgment tone in your voice and without the eye rolling or anything like that.
Mhm.
And then empathize. Find some way that you can let them know that you could understand. Maybe you've been in a similar situation, or it might even be, if I were in your situation, I would probably feel the same way. Or if you've been in their situation, you can say, yeah, I've been late before because I've gotten lost. So I know what that's like. And then you can find something to agree on. And this could be common ground, a common experience, a common value. And not every conversation needs a solution, but
Yeah.
for those that need a solution, you can find a way to partner together, which is, it's not you versus me, it's we working together toward a solution. And I will say, you don't even have to get all the way through LEAP sometimes. Honestly, if someone's upset and you encourage them to talk, and maybe you're nodding or asking questions and just listening, a lot of people just need to be listened to. And the fact that you're listening without getting defensive, without judging, can really de-escalate a conflict. And then if you can empathize, so I have seen this with people. In fact, I'll give you the short story that where the first time I used this. I was homeschooling my kids, and my son, who was, I think, 15 or 16 at the time, had a flip-flop schedule to me. He would be up at night and asleep during the day.
Wow.
And I was just the opposite. And I wanted to do school during the day. And I was so annoyed with him. I mean, I'm harping at him. Yeah, it didn't work. Okay. Harping at your children just doesn't work. And then I read some book, I think that Dr. Amador had written. And I thought, I'm going to try this. So one time I was, like, Sean, I'd like to talk with you about homeschooling. And he was like, "Arr." And I said, tell me why, you're always awake at night and asleep during the day. We never can connect. And then he like looked at me like she really wants to know. And he said, well, because you're always controlling me. You never let me do what I want. And it's just easier to avoid you. I'm like, wow. And then I said something along the lines of, I guess if I were in your shoes and I had someone who was as pushy as me, I probably feel the same way. And at that point, his eyes got teary. It's like, I finally got it. And we ended up agreeing that we would find some time. I would give him some autonomy. And we shifted things a little bit. Not perfect, but it was better. And so I thought, hey, this works for teenagers. I bet it could work in the business world too.
Wow. It is powerful.
Yeah.
That's really, and now, so then he ended up being awake during the day.
Well, let's say we had more of an overlap. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Wow, that is so cool. Now, for those of you who are listening instead of watching, she's got a chart that says LEAP into conflict resolution. The word listen has an ear by it, empathize has a heart, agree has a thumbs up, and partner has two hands shaking. So you can even make your own chart that looks just like it. LEAP, like potato. Now, some of us are wondering here, what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun?
Some of the things.
Well, so I sometimes combine things that I like to do for fun. So I love listening to audiobooks, podcast, YouTube videos. And right now I'm sort of on a health and fitness kick, and there's a ton of content
Mm,
on that topic. And I will combine that with two other things I really enjoy doing. One is going on walks when it's still hot during the day in Houston. So the walks have to be later in the day or earlier in the day. Or I love doing meal prep
mm.
where, I want to change how I'm eating. So it's a lot more vegetables, a lot of chopping. And it's honestly a drag to do
Really?
that every day. So I will do it in batches. Like often on a Saturday, I'll spend maybe 2, 3 hours prepping food and chopping stuff up, maybe putting some stuff in the freezer for later in the week. And
Yeah.
while I'm doing that, I will listen to an audiobook or a podcast. So that's kind of
Yeah,
what
that
I
makes
like
sense.
doing for fun.
That makes sense. How would you complete this sentence? No one would believe it if they saw me.
Well, this is kind of already given away, but
Oh,
no one would believe it if they saw me using my GPS to
ah,
go to a place that I've been to 10 times. And I kid you not, when we first moved to the Houston area, we had a grocery store just a mile from us. And there were only really two ways to get there. But probably the first 10 times, I still use my GPS because I I can turn right when other people turn left, and it took a long time for me to get the whole landmark thing down. So people are like, "You seem like a smart, articulate person, but you can't find your way out of a paper bag."
it's totally different things. I mean, geez.
Yeah, yeah.
But I can relate though. I mean, oh my goodness. I don't know if it's that I mean, I remember I was known in high school for going to the same soccer field day after day and still not knowing how to get to the soccer field. I'm going, maybe I wasn't paying attention, or maybe the fact that there were six people in the car with me all trying to get to the same place and I was listening to them instead of me. I don't know.
Well,
But
do you remember pre-GPS days? We had
oh,
like I had the Thomas Brother map. I remember that, where it was like a thick spiral bound book. And you'd figure out where you want to go, and you'd have to start on the right map, and then you'd have to go to another quadrant in another map. I'm
oh
so
wow.
glad for GPS.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, it's totally saved me. Especially after we no longer had payphones to ask where the heck we were. I mean, ask someone if you call them for directions, but oh man. Now I just need one of those handy plastic things you stick on the car dashboard to put the phone into to look at the GPS. Because
Well,
otherwise,
there's lots of them on Amazon.
oh
So,
yeah. Speaking of what else is on Amazon before we close up here, Diane is a prolific writer of speech-related books, all super popular, unbelievable. Cat Got Your Tongue is one of them. What are the other ones?
well,
There's
so I wanted to point out these are not my most popular books. This is Cat Got Your Tongue and Impromptu Speaking are, but my very first book, Small Talk Big Results,
oh yeah.
it's a very short book with a very short chapter on leap. And then I wrote this one a long time ago called The Respect
Ooh,
Virus.
interesting.
And this is more for creating a contagious culture of respect at work. So those are just two different books that
I good.
don't get bought a lot, but they're still good. They're short, easy to read.
It's amazing. And she's an improv actress and just a wonderful human being. And so And if you do ping her up for a session, she's also, what else might you have in common with her? That, well, she's got the kids, she's got, let's see here, you got a cat, you're Christian, you love chips, you like.
Oh, I'm cutting down on the chips.
Okay, forget that. She loves sledding, although she doesn't know.
Well, no, I got rid of my sled,
sledding.
broke my back a year and a half ago sledding, don't sled anymore, and there's no hills, no snow in Houston.
But there's that. Okay. Now, please comment, for all of you wonderful people out there, what was the most valuable takeaway for you, and what you thought, what you would ask Diane in a session that it would really trip you up, or just maybe ask her personally. Anyway, thank you for being part of our show, Diane, and thank you all for subscribing. It's free. Check back later. Enjoy the weekend. See you later.
Thanks, Lily.
Thank you so much.